and therefore, unless necessary, and we thank you very much for your time.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, wonders never cease. I'm beginning to think that if my colleague from Siparia comes to the Parliament more often, we get a lot of work done. Because, Madam Speaker, this bill has a history in this House, as the member for Siparia pointed out. We've been grappling with this bill on many occasions. And while the leader of the opposition made a big point in saying, why are we coming with it again and again? It is because, Madam Speaker, we genuinely believe that this bill will assist the police to at least put a bit of pressure on those who have chosen crime as a way of life in this country. The police are the ones who ask the government, the parliamentarians, to put this measure in place, to deal not with every citizen, but with a small number of people who are literally terrorizing the population. So when the member asks, what is the purpose of the bill? I think everybody knows the answer to that. The purpose is to prevent people from using the goodwill of the population to terrorize the population. Exactly. Because the criminals know exactly what the law permits and what it doesn't permit. And they know the logistics in applying the law to them, and they have no regard for the discomfort that they're causing to the wider national population. So the answer to that question is simple. If you get yourself in a situation where you can be charged, taken before the court for these listed very serious offenses, the people's representatives in the House have put positions in place where you'll be inconvenienced. You will be inconvenienced. And Madam Speaker, to say that because the law has not put an end to criminality or an end to the growing incidence of violent crime, that the law is going to be useless, is not a reasonable argument. Because there are a number of laws on the books that are not applied every day, because the instances of the crime or whatever doesn't happen every day. Because if you're saying that laws can only go or should only go on the books if the breaches take place every day, well, then the ones where it hasn't happened for the last 10 years or the last 2 weeks should come off the books. So that doesn't really change the price of anything. The offenses are occurring very frequently, Madam Speaker. And there will be a number of instances where this provision will be found to be suitable on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't say that everybody who commits a violent crime will end up being denied bail. But there are instances that the judicial officers will say to themselves and to the population, you require to be kept here for a while. And in fact, Madam Speaker, there's another purpose to it. If a person is to be denied bail, we trust that the rest of the system, the judiciary, will be cognizant of that. And the police will be cognizant of that. So that when a person is denied bail for this prescribed period, people at this time in our country facing the criminal onslaught, will know that we have to work faster and better to be able to have the trial expedited so that a position of guilt or innocence can be established in a reasonable time frame, having the benefit of the person having been denied bail for the number of days that the law provides. So the matter doesn't end after this law is passed. It puts a requirement on others to use it. Because if after the number of days the conditions are not met by the police and the judiciary, then this would be another failing on the part of the societal response. So, Madam Speaker, I notice my colleague from Siparia is obsessed with elections and saying that with your record, I would stay far from the election. But my colleague is every time my colleague gets the opportunity, she talks about an election is due. Who tell you that? Madam Speaker, I want to comfort my colleague from Siparia. I do not intend to call the election very soon. You have to be here for a little while longer in that seat. So, Madam Speaker, this government that I lead was elected to serve for 5 years. And as far as the last time I checked, there's a long time, a British parliamentarian, I think it was Harold Wilson, who said that a week is a long time in politics. A week is a long time in politics. And so therefore, we have a number of weeks ahead of us. So therefore, as far as my colleague is concerned, I think she should take it as we have a long time to go to your next defeat. So don't be too anxious. Don't be too anxious. Madam Speaker, the reason why the bill is here today is that it could have been here before. I think I can't remember how many months ago, almost a year ago, when we talked, it's about a year ago, it's since the new president was here, we talked about discussing things that the government should meet the opposition over. I remember writing the opposition leader immediately and saying, look, we have a team led by the Attorney General who will chair a team. This was one of the number one matters. This was one of the matters that we identified, and we did say our list is not exhaustive. You might have other things that you think we should do. And I thought that covered the whole plethora of things. But again, in the strange way of interpreting things, the opposition didn't see it useful to meet, to discuss this. So let us thank Beryl. It might have been brought by the hurricane. But let us thank Beryl that today we are going to meet in the chamber, in committee, to do what we said we should have done a while ago. Because my colleague did point out, it's basically the same bill. There are a few changes. There are some amendments to be offered, some amendments to be accepted or rejected. But today, according to what my colleague has said, today we are going to pass this bill in this House. After that bill. So, Madam Speaker, sometimes it takes a colleague from purgatory to advise my colleague from Siparia to accept the bill today. Because another point I want to... Madam Speaker, I would like to ask you to ask the member first in Naparima. He mashed up the UNC already. Tell him, have nothing... Tell him.
Yeah. So, honorable members, it's very heartening to see that we are in this sort of mood, but we're still bound by the standing orders. Okay, no crosstalk. You address the speaker. If a member wants to speak, they could either stand on a point of order. We know the rules, so let's practice them, even in the good spirit that we are in. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to advise him to stay out of PNM business and PNM elections. Right? So, but I did observe, Madam Speaker, I did observe in the presentation of the member for Siparia the point made about the setting of new yardsticks, saying that, I think she was taken from the Attorney General, saying that we here in the House should stay with the template of leaving with the judiciary this discretion that they have, and apparently we shouldn't do anything to interfere with that because discretion belongs to the judiciary. That might be true, and that is how it was. That is how it is. But because of the exceptional circumstances of the behavior of a small number of citizens who are terrorizing this country with criminal conduct, violent crime of the worst kind, the people's representatives in this House are to take it upon ourselves to change the rule so that an advantage could come to the wider law-abiding population, and if it inconveniences the small criminal minority, then so be it. But the Parliament should change it, and the Parliament in our system is to make the law, and the judiciary's role is to interpret the law and apply the law.
That's right.
And if we do that, then the criminals will find themselves with no safe haven. And I think my colleague from Siparia understands that, and I think my colleague from Siparia knows that what used to happen in the judiciary for decades or even centuries can be changed by parliamentary action. It is, Madam Speaker, in some jurisdictions, they've put in. There was never any control over the number of times you could commit a crime, and had a specific response in terms of the punishment. But some people went to their parliament when recidivism was getting the better of the law-abiding citizens. They went to the parliament and they created 3 strikes and you're out, or 3 strikes and you're in. If you appear in court on a 3rd occasion for an offense that you have committed, in this instance, criminal offense, you are automatically going to make a serious jail because you have come here on a 3rd occasion. 3 strikes. That was in the United States. There are many states that use that to bring criminals to heel because they were coming too frequently for the conduct of violent crime. So they changed the law and dictated to the judiciary that those who come before you on a 3rd occasion must go to jail. Left no discretion. So I think my colleague from Siparia knows that. Because when Section 34 was enacted in this House, it was novel legislation saying that if an offense was committed in a certain time, retroactively we look back and if it wasn't prosecuted by a certain time, then you get to war. That was a situation where you were treating with the status quo and passing law to make substantial change, except that on that occasion, it wasn't for the purpose and the benefit of the wider population, it was for a small significant minority. Madam Speaker, If you talk to the police officers, and I want to make the point again, the police officers, especially those who go out there every night and every day and confront the armed, murderous criminals, they will tell you that what irks them most is the revolving door. Having to go to the same people or the same people over and over. You arrest them, you go before the court, they go through the process, and within 48 hours, they're back out on the street doing the same thing again or worse. You talk to the police officers, the ones who we send out there to put their lives on the line, they will tell you that is the worst part of the job. Because if they manage to apprehend, if they manage to identify them, they believe that that should slow down the role that they play in the criminal incidents in the country. But no, they go to the court, they have no fear of the court, they have no fear of being detained, they just go back out the next day, the next week, and they carry on. So, Madam Speaker, this measure will bring about a certain amount of inconvenience to those who we pick up who have been doing this crime. And of course, Madam Speaker, in many instances, what drives us to do this is also the brazenness that some of these criminals operate in this country. As though they're in your face, we don't care. You can do us nothing. Sometimes when you read or hear the news about the crime, you ask, what manner of people conceive that? And therefore, when the police identify that person, then you need to know that there's some element of restraint. And all we can expect after we do this and pass the law is that we will operate our judicial system so that justice can be had in a timely manner. That's all it can do. And Madam Speaker, my colleague from Siparia asked about exceptional circumstances. And it brings me to the point again. In one breath, we are saying that we should not leave exceptional circumstances for the judiciary to interpret. But I think that is something that you can leave to the judiciary. Because to deem something exceptional, you have to identify it in the context of what is the average behavior. If it is average or appears in the average statistically, you will know what point on the curve you will pick to say this is the average, the mean. And if the action is way beyond that mean, then clearly it's exceptional. I mean, today, all last night we spent our time looking at a hurricane. Hurricanes do pass in this southern part of the Caribbean, but so infrequently that anybody who looks at it against the occurrences on an annual basis and where they pass during the year will say a hurricane threatening Tobago or Trinidad is an exceptional occurrence. It doesn't say it doesn't happen. But on a case by case, you can judge it against the mean. And I think the judges and the magistrates can do that very easily because we know what the mean is. So in one breath, we're saying, don't leave that discretion to identify the exceptional. But in the other breath, you're saying, leave the bail, which is to the discretion. So to determine bail, and to restrict bail and to identify where bail should apply, under exceptional circumstances, you say, no, you're trampling on the judiciary's discretion. But then you're saying in the next breath, leave exceptional circumstances interpretation to the discretion. So I think, these are arguments which were interesting, but don't change the need for this bill. And the most important thing I would like to see out of this bill, Madam Speaker, when you say that reenacted, is the expediting of trials in the country's courts. The criminals must know once you are apprehended, you are on a fast track to making a jail if you're guilty and to get back to your freedom if you're innocent. When we pass this, if it is still business as usual in the courts, where today's matter will be heard in the next 5-10 years, then we would have accomplished nothing. But if, on the other hand, we manage to expedite trials, dispense justice in a timely manner, this measure will bring about a significant relief for the wider population. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader offered the House today a chance to save time by saying that our colleagues on the other side will today support this bill. I'm glad to hear that. I would be the only speaker on this side because let us spend our time in committee treating with the suggested amendments and any other. And as responsible parliamentarians, let us give the police a chance. And let the criminals know that in this parliament, the people's representatives have taken the initiative to shorten the instances of persons taking advantage of a population that has had just too much of violent criminal conduct. And this is what parliamentarians can do. As they say, we know what police can do. This is what parliamentarians can do. Madam Speaker, I look forward to a productive session in committee. And at the end of it, in quick order, given the number of hours we spent debating this over and over, today, in short order, with the amendments we have in front of us and whatever comes up in committee, that we leave this House as early as possible, passing this amendment and reenacting this law. Madam Speaker, I am grateful for the support on behalf of the wider national population. We're grateful for the support, and we expect that at the end of the day, the population will get the relief that these measures offer. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I take note of the remarks of the Honorable Prime Minister, and I'm quite keen to get to the committee stage so that we can conclude this important exercise